All right, we are back.
We are back. Hope everyone had a great conversation and a great resume review. Learned a ton. We're going to jump into a panel discussion with Crystal and Vanessa from the People and Talent team at CSM. But before we do that, we want to pass the mic to you all. So we started talking about the resume review. I want to see if any students were willing or courageous enough to come up here and share any insights that they got from their conversation with the rest of the group. So does anyone want to come up stage? If you want to come up to the stage, you can raise your hand or drop in the Q&A, and I'll pull you up. And here comes Mika, and then Monica will get you next. Is it Mika or Micah?
I'm not. Can you all hear me? Oh, okay. This is how it should. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. I am Micah McKinney, and I was partnered with Mr. Justin, and we had a great conversation. He gave us some great tips about mine in particular was spacing. Because I had a 2-page resume, and that's one thing I've been struggling with. So that's the biggest takeaway. And then just making sure you can decipher whether you want it to be qualitative or quantitative, if that is your focus or anything. But thank you all so much for this opportunity.
Micah, great work. And while we have you, and Justin has a point of view, he's a sharp guy, but we've got people from the People and Talent team here. So Vanessa, Crystal, is it true no more than 1-page resume for entry-level candidates?
Yeah, we sort of have that bit of a rule, right? As an entry-level candidate, there isn't that much experience technically that should be on your resume. So 1 page, I would say, would be a rule of thumb as you're starting your career.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Great job, Micah.
Personally, I think it's 1 page.
Cool. And it's only going to get harder, Micah. You sound like you're a great student. You have a lot of great activity, but it's only getting harder when you're an old, bald, gray-haired person like myself.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Micah. We're going to bring up Monica. Let's see what Monica learned. Monica's back.
Monica, hello. Hi.
Hey, Monica.
So I was paired with Rebecca and Jeff. He was in on the call as well. Basically, Rebecca gave me some great advice. I had kind of a wordy paragraph in the beginning just because I figured that it would kind of help explain like my goals and like what I want and who I am and what I'm looking for. But I kind of made it a little bit too wordy, which I was kind of hesitant about originally. But hearing that from Rebecca gave me some clarity on, maybe removing some parts of it and separating it and putting a skills section. And then she also explained that, I'm doing something current. Like, for example, I'm still doing Rover, which is like a professional dog walking company. And I had past tense words in my description. So just making sure that everything is present. So that was like really helpful. Yeah, so that's about it.
Thanks for sharing, Monica. I guess, Crystal, quick question on resumes. Do you think there should be like a highlights or qualifications or an intro? Do you recommend that, or just get experience?
I think highlights is really a good call out, especially a skills section. Sometimes in our roles, we do like to see, not normally for entry-level talent, but as you kind of get higher in your career, we do like to quickly scan your resume to see if applicants have a specific skill set or experience with software, Salesforce, or I know Keynote's really big here with our apprentices. So if it's something that's really easy to spot, we love to see it.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you.
And then we're going to bring up one more student. Jesse's going to come up and talk about one thing he learned from resume, and then we're going to jump in. Okay? Hey, Jesse.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
What did you learn, buddy?
So Samson and I spoke with Shauna, and one thing that really stood out to us was she spoke about if you have a job or a specific kind of job, a dream job, you should look at the job posting and the keywords they use for what they're looking for and kind of cater your resume towards that. So say if they want someone who's good with a specific kind of software or displays a certain trait, using that within obviously not plagiarizing, but kind of like weaving that within your resume it goes a long way, because a lot of the companies use like AI software to like screen resumes and stuff like that, or people that look at resumes and so on and so forth. They're looking for those keywords. So it kind of like gets you past the first couple of stages, I guess you would say.
Great work, Jess. We have 2 people here that look at resumes. Is that accurate? Should you marry up the language?
Yeah, Vanessa and I was actually talking about this earlier, and it definitely helps if you kind of tailor your resume, but it is time consuming. So there's kind of like, should you tailor every single resume to your applicants, to your applications? And you should have kind of more of a targeted resume. So say I have a master resume, and if I wanted to apply for recruiting focused roles, I would have kind of like more of a recruitment focused resume. But if I had more of an interest in the general side of HR, then I can have a resume that kind of highlights all of my generalist tasks, and I can kind of like just pick and choose between my resumes instead of tailoring every single resume to every single application.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Good seeing you again. And then we're going to jump in to the presentation. So a couple things that I want to get out of the way, and I'll have Vanessa and Crystal introduce themselves. We're going to use the poll function again, like we did in the previous chat, which is a great way to kind of put the poll up there, see what you guys think, and then Crystal and Vanessa can provide a professional point of view. I also wanted to make sure that we promoted a unique opportunity for all the students that are attending here today. So you've come to this event. This is your first kind of event, or this is your first step. CSM is a proud partner of Sports Biz Camps, and they were actually creating a second step program for those of you that really enjoyed this experience and maybe want to go deeper into CSM and or getting yourself professionally ready. So the CSM Skills Academy is a program for anyone that's ever come to a Sports Biz Camps program. Immediately following this event, you'll get a note about applying and registering to attend. It's a 4-week program over the course of October. It's free to attend like always. It gives you really professional experience into what CSM does as a sports and entertainment marketing agency, skills and insights from executives, and obviously it's going to be a great resume builder and a great thing to add to your LinkedIn as well. So just wanted to give that shameless plug. And we also have another opportunity with On Location Experience, similar but different program, and for those of you that don't work with an organization like On Location. So more information to come, but I wanted to make sure that I promoted that before we handed the mic to Crystal and Vanessa. So Crystal, I'll start with you. Maybe kind of a short introduction on yourself, your background, and what your role is at CSM. Then we'll jump into the polls.
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me. My name is Crystal, and I am the Talent Acquisition Manager here at CSM. I've been with CSM since February of this year, so still relatively new. And in short, it's really kind of screening resumes, pushing forward the right candidates, interviewing, making the offers and the hiring decisions, or helping the team make hiring decisions and offers, and pretty much locking them down before I pass it over to Vanessa for the onboarding portion.
Awesome. So I guess I can just go ahead and introduce myself.
There you go.
Love it. Thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Santos, and I am the People and Talent Coordinator here at CSM for North America. So I've been here at CSM for a little over a year now. And in my role as a People and Talent Coordinator, I help a lot with onboarding and offboarding. So anything that has to do with the sort of legal paperwork that's needed for payroll, as well as the really fun things about like how to access the office and everything else related to that. I also help Crystal with recruiting. So it's a lot of scheduling interviews. I have the privilege of reaching out to candidates. I'm the first person that reaches out to those that apply and are like, hey, thank you for applying. We would love to meet you. So those are some of the main things that I do. And very much, I would say about half of my role is also the internship and apprenticeship program, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And I'm really excited to share that information with you guys.
Awesome. It is a great team. We're so appreciative of you all being here, and you have a lot of insights that our students are going to want to love to hear to help them get ahead before graduation. So we're going to publish the first poll. And the first question is, applying for the job. You should only apply for jobs for which you're 100% qualified. So it's a yes or no question. Just looking to get here some perspective. We'll wait a couple seconds for students to start to drop in some votes, and then I'm going to kick it to the experts to provide their point of view on this. Looks like right now a lot of it is no. So, Crystal, maybe starting with you, should these students for their entry-level jobs only apply for jobs for which they're 100% qualified?
I think that people should apply for jobs that they're 70% qualified for, or even 60%. I think to find somebody that can fit 100%, that's a unicorn, and unicorns are very, very rare. And what a lot of people don't realize, especially entry-level talent, is that a lot of skills are transferable. And we're willing to teach as long as you're willing to learn.
Vanessa, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with Crystal. I want to say about 70% should be it. You will most likely not find the role that you are 100% qualified for. You also have to think about growing and learning opportunities, right? So if you are the exact sort of person that they're looking for, will you be learning anything in that role? Or are you just going to be there to do the exact things that they need, right? So you do not need to be 100% match your resume to the job description. 100% should be applying to the roles that you think you could be doing and are about 70% match.
You know, I mean, I've probably had 5 or 6 jobs, I guess. I don't even know how many. I'm old. But I've never been really qualified for any of them. And I had qualifications, but I was never, if they asked for 7 years experience, I had 5. Or if they asked for 3 years experience, I had 1. So, you know, part of that is identifying it's the right fit for you, and then obviously being able to persuade people based upon your experience level. But I think similar to that, and you know, Crystal and Vanessa can talk about this, but when it comes to experience, for instance, I mean, that's maybe where people feel underqualified. Why do job descriptions say for existence for entry level experience like 1 to 3 years? So why is it written like that? And then 2, Vanessa, you and I talked about this. How do we reflect internship experience? How do we measure that?
Yeah, I'll let Crystal answer the first part of the question about like why it's worded that way, mainly because she has more experience in the field. But as someone who's just starting her career, I mean, this is my first job straight out of college, and I've been here for just a little over a year now. So, you know, I can very much relate to this. One thing that people, students specifically, need to realize is that internships are experience. So when I was applying for jobs for my first job out of college, I would see 1 to 2 years of experience, and I would go back to my resume and I'll say, wait, I have about two internship listed on my resume. So I'll count those as 2 years because they technically took place in 2 different years, right? I mean, you do learn, it is experience. You have already been exposed to the industry, ideally within the same industry that you're applying for a job at, and you have connections. So 100% I can say your internships do count as experience.
Yes, so Crystal, our recent college students, what level of experience should they be applying for? Is 1 to 3 in their wheelhouse?
Yes, 1 to 3 is definitely in the wheelhouse. And you kind of answered that question, that first part of the question, with your second question, and Vanessa did as well. Internship experience do count. You are actually, in most internships, doing an actual job. You're not fetching coffee or making photocopies or these administrative tasks like that anymore. They're really substantial responsibilities that you can put on your resume and actually say, hey, I do have experience in this. So it does count. And yeah, entry-level talent with the internship experience apply to 1 to 3 years of experience. If it says on a job description, you are qualified for that.
But Crystal, 3 to 5 is probably not the right fit.
No,
even if they had 5.
And actually, funny enough, we are recruiting for a manager level role, and we do have people that only have internship experience apply to 3 to 5, and that's just like an automatic disqualifier on my part, because they're just not a fit for that role. And to hire somebody that doesn't have that level of experience for a manager level role is just setting them up for failure.
Yeah. So 1 to 3 years experience, great insight. Anything above 3, take the job with 1 to 3 first, and then apply for that 1 or 2 years down the road. That's great stuff, guys. I'm going to publish our next one. This is really getting into the interviews portion, which I think everyone has lots of questions related to. So as a good candidate, a good interview is one where the hiring manager does 80% of the talking. So it's where you as the candidate is sitting there listening to having a conversation, but a lot of the talking is happening with the hiring manager. So I'll hide it from the stage, and it sounds like Crystal, you do a lot of the interviews. We'll start with you. Where's your head at on that? And then, what does a good interview look like in terms of how it feels for you, and then how it is for the candidate?
I think a great interview always feels like a conversation and not an interrogation. You should have as many questions for the interviewer as the interviewer has for you. It should be a conversation, and this is also the time for you to figure out if this role is what you expect it to be, what you want it to be, and if this company has that values that you can align yourself with, and can you see yourself working at an organization like this. So really, it's a two-way street. They're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. The resume gets you in the door, but you kind of have to use this as an opportunity to sell yourself, to say, hey, I could do this job and why I would be a good fit, as well as kind of figure out, can I see myself at an organization such as CSM?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to remember that, very much like Crystal said, it should be a conversation, something that sparks naturally. So if you just have in the back of your brain, like, hey, I've been doing a lot of the talking, or this person hasn't, I feel like it's setting yourself up for failure in that sense of you're just being a little bit too self-conscious about it. It's just really important to remember that you're also interviewing them, right? Like Crystal said, keep in mind that they are also selling you in the position. Not only are you selling yourself as a candidate, but they're selling you the organization, the team, the salary, and the organization as a whole.
Really good points. It's funny. I was teaching for a number of years, and I'd talk to students. I'm like, how'd your interview go? They're like, oh, it was awesome. It was so great, blah, blah. And I've asked why. They're like, well, I talked a whole bunch and blah, 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 blah. Right. So you don't want to be the only one talking. You want to have that conversation, to Crystal's point. And really, it's a cheat code. It's like you're sitting down with the teacher, figuring out what the answers are to the test, if you're understanding what they're looking to accomplish to a certain extent. So I think the best way that Crystal identified that is like maybe a 50-50 part conversation, right? They ask a couple questions, and you should come back and play offense, right? And ask a couple questions as well and build on that type of stuff. It should not feel like you're doing all the talking. It definitely should not be like they're doing all the talking. It's really a conversation. And we all know what a bad conversation looks like. Don't do that.
I also, one more point is, if you feel like you're doing most of the talking, it's okay to take a pause and kind of like reassess. It's always like if an interviewer asks you a question and you don't know the answer, it's okay to take a pause and kind of think about the answer. Otherwise, you're going to be rambling, and that's why you're going to do most of the talking.
Yeah, so let's say that happens, Crystal. Let's say you ask me a question, I don't have a good answer. Can I say that? And like, can I get back to you, or I hadn't thought about that, or how
I kind of segue into like a filler. I'll be like, that's a really great question. Let me think about it, and just take a few seconds to think about it. Obviously, you're not sitting there for 5 minutes thinking about a response. That's not ideal, because time is valuable for both you and the interviewer, but you can acknowledge that it's a good question. And while acknowledging that it's a good question, take that pause, quick pause, and come back with an answer.
That's happened to me a couple times in interviews. And I think I said, hey, I don't really get an answer. Can I have some time to think about it? And then it actually created a really good follow-up opportunity. So I gave myself like the next day to send a thank you to the interviewer anyways, but then say, I gave some thought to that question or that challenge you identified, and here's what I'm thinking. And I think that went over better than if I had been rambling or making something up on the fly and sputtering, basically, right? So it also shows that you're thorough, and it provides a natural reason for that follow-through. Kind of similar to that, and this is where I think interviews are won or lost, is in the preparation and the level of intent going into the interview. So during your interview, you can bring a notebook to take notes and even some pre-planned questions. Yes or no? So Vanessa, we'll start with you. Like, bring notes. Is that okay?
Absolutely, 100%. It shows that you are prepared, that you did your research, that you've already come with pre-planned questions in case that none come up naturally. I absolutely love when people come prepared. And actually, when I met Patrick a few days ago, I told him, I did my research, I did my homework. And I think like that speaks very highly of you as a candidate, and it shows a lot of attention to detail and curiosity. It's just very important. One of the things that I can say about interviewing is to definitely do your research, right? About the role, about the person that's interviewing you. If someone, if they do share the interviewer's name, make sure that you look them up. See where they went to school, look at their major, how long they've been at the company. So you're not just asking these questions like, oh, how long have you been here for? When like you could have found that in my LinkedIn.
Yeah, I agree. I think it shows a lot of prep work. Also, a notebook and a pen is super handy because while you're kind of having your interview or your conversation, if you have a question, but now's not the time to ask it, jot that question down really quickly. Obviously, you're not staring at the paper, and then you're actually like just jot it down on the side, because questions or thoughts hold up space in your brain. So you don't want to look preoccupied or that you're not paying attention. So you just jot that question down, revisit it when it's a better time, or as Patrick said, segue into a good follow-up. So it kind of helps you figure out kind of what questions do you want to ask. Also, pre-planned questions are great, but if your pre-planned questions are answered through the course of the interview, that's not a question you should ask any longer. Cross that question off the list, because if you ask, if I tell you what is the day-to-day responsibilities of this role, and that was your question at the end of our interview, then I leave with the impression of you just didn't hear a word I said the last however many minutes.
Yeah, it's really great call, Crystal. It's like having a game plan, right? If you guys bring a game plan into an NFL game, and you're like, we're going to run this play, but you see a different defense out there and you want to run a play against a stacked box, like you wouldn't run the run play. So put in the time, put in the effort. But if you're following along the conversation, you wouldn't want to ask something that's already been addressed, or just ask it to ask it. But I would highly recommend, I wrote in there, research is respect. It is not creepy to go into an interview with Crystal and know where she went to college, or see that she's worked at 2 other places. Like, that's not creepy. Students think that's creepy, Crystal. I think that's like stalking. Like,
no. It's well prepared. I mean, if you went hunting for like my dog's name, that's a little creepy. But, the information that's on LinkedIn, it's all right.
And also, Crystal may see that you looked at her LinkedIn account, right? Which means that you're doing your research, you're putting in that effort. Those are good signs. That shows that you care about Crystal. You care about the role. You want to learn more. You're coming with intent. That is not creepy. That is not stalking. That is research. So treat those opportunities as such. And then if you're not good on the fly, if you get stressed out at interviews, write that stuff down. Write down the 10 questions, or write down the 5 pieces of information you need to get out of that stuff. Bring it. And then, if you're awkward at making eye contact, it's a natural way to look down at your notebooks. You don't have to stare at someone for 20 minutes, right? So use these different things. They're like crutches, but they're cheat codes. It's like different ways and audibles you can utilize to put yourself in a good spot. Interviews are tough, guys. They're tough.
Yeah.
I'm saying that as someone who went on 15 interviews to get a job out of school, and I struck out 14 times and finally got the 15th, right? But it's because I had gone to the 14 and I screwed up. I had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And to give a little tip about that eye contact that you mentioned, Patrick, if eye contact is tough for you, whether you're new to the world of the corporate world or the interview process, or even if it's a cultural thing, I've noticed that it's a cultural thing for me to not make a lot of eye contact with superiors, and that's something that I've had to be like early on in my career. It's like, Crystal, Americans value eye contact. If you don't look them in the eye, they don't find you trustworthy. So if you can't look at them in the eye, or you feel like, wow, I've been staring into this person's eyes for like the longest time and it feels creepy, stare at their ear. It's close enough.
I like that. That's a really good one.
That is a new one. We got a lot of ear starers at sports biz camps now.
Now I'm being self-conscious about my ears, but you don't have to always look at the eyes.
Oh, Crystal, that is a really good point, and I really appreciate the context from a cultural standpoint as well, because I definitely don't think that's something that a lot of people understand. So Samson had a question here. I want to bring him up, and this is like the question I'm sure a lot of people got. I'm sure you all got when you were interviewing for the role. So, like, someone asks about their weaknesses, and how do you address that question? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I could take this on. This is actually one of the things that I love talking about the most, um, mainly because it's hard talking about your weaknesses, right? So when someone asks you what are your weaknesses and are your strengths, we can always 100% talk about our strengths, right? And we feel confident in them. Your weaknesses, you should always come with something prepared about like things that you're doing to work on them. So like, for example, for me, it was public speaking. So I would say one of my biggest weaknesses is speaking in public. And what I'm doing at the moment is participating more often in my bigger classes, so that I can get a bit more participation and also just experience in the field. And so now I feel a bit more comfortable speaking in front of others. So whatever sort of weakness you do bring to the interview, one, be ready. They were 100% going to ask you in one of the rounds. So be prepared to answer that, and just make sure that you come prepared with things that you're doing to sort of work on them, rather than just saying my weakness is, public speaking. That's it. And then another thing is making sure that your weaknesses are not things that are essential to the role. So I wouldn't say public speaking is my weakness if I were applying for a role that was a requirement, like events, right? So just being mindful of those things.
Crystal, anything you'd want to add?
No, Vanessa did a really thorough job with doing that. And I agree. I think definitely acknowledging weaknesses is always good, because everyone's human and there's always areas of improvement. What I do say, instead of like saying, tell me about your weakness, I'll rephrase it and be like, what's your area of improvement? So then that way you're like, okay, well, here's something I'm not so strong at, but here's my action items to kind of fix that. And it shows that you're self-aware, right? If somebody tells me like, I don't have any weaknesses, I'm like, are you sure? But Vanessa's also right. Make sure that your weaknesses aren't detrimental to the role. If we're looking for somebody who, accounts payable specialist, and you're like, yeah, I don't like numbers, or I'm not good at Excel. Well, then maybe that's not the role you should apply for. But also, then I'm not as inclined to say you're my top 3 candidate if those skills are really essential to the role and you're not. Those are your weaknesses.
Samson, it's great to see you again.
It's great to be back.
How you
Thank
doing,
you guys
man?
for the insight. I'm doing great. It's actually been going really well.
Good.
So yeah.
Samson's in New York.
Yes, I
Came to our
am.
program last year. You're a sophomore, right? Or junior now?
I am now a junior. I'm now a
Oh, man.
junior.
Congrats.
Up,
Past- Thank you. Yeah, going on up, getting almost there. So it's been great. I did an internship over the summer, so it was pretty great.
That's experience.
Yes, and
Yes,
they
it
offered me
is.
a part-time job, so now I'm there.
So actually, that's a good segue. And Samson, just because I like you, I want to keep you up stage real quick. Part-time work. So we're talking about entry level corporate jobs, and a lot of our students have jobs working in food service or in retail or grocery stores or driving Uber, whatever that is.
Right.
How do they talk about that if it's not necessarily relevant to the role? Like, how do you guys view that kind of those experiences?
There's always ways to tweak your experience to make it relevant. Let's use Uber driving as an example. Uber driving, you need to have people skills, or you can sell that you have people skills and time management, and also kind of like customer service. So you kind of like how you package your experience to kind of sell yourself, right? Most of the Uber drivers that we really like, they can read the room, right? So if like a passenger comes on, you're like, okay, well, that passenger doesn't look like they want to talk. Or if somebody who really wants to talk. So it's kind of like how you approach all that stuff. There's always ways to talk about these experiences. Yeah, you're an Uber driver, but you're an Uber driver that provides excellent service. Or, you have you make people feel comfortable, or, time management, things like that.
Absolutely. One other thing that I would add to that would be, if you already have internship experience and it fills up that one page, that's the ideal for the resume, then you do not need to include the rest. That's something that I struggled with, where I was like, well, how's it going to look like? Because I did a part-time job at several stores while I was in college. And so I said, if I don't include it, then that'll be the gap. But that's normal. You're in school, and you can always just mention it during the interview process, which is what I did. So I'll say something that's not listed on my resume is that I actually did part-time work at a store. So I do have retail experience, and you mentioned the customer service, but it doesn't necessarily need to be listed in your resume. I would include it very much like Crystal said, showing these transferable skills if you sort of need a filler. But if it's already, if you already have a full resume, don't worry about it. You can just bring up all of those beautiful attributes and skills that you gained there during the interview process.
Yeah. Relevance, right?
Yes.
It should be relevance and something that you're comfortable talking about. Otherwise, me as a recruiter, I'll be like, oh, I saw you did this. Tell me about that. And you're like, oh, well, this job sucked.
Yeah, I mean, any experience is good experience. Entry level, I think it shows that you're employable, right? So they want employable people that show up to work, they do good work, they can keep a job. Like everyone was in college once. I used to donate plasma for money. Like that's how poor I was, right? So I wouldn't put that on a resume. I should have gotten a part-time job if I was really doing stuff and having experience.
That can be under the causes. If you needed a filler, causes.
Volunteer.
It was for money. It was for beer money. But the point being, guys, is don't be bashful. Don't be shy. If you're getting experience, you're paying for it. You're not competing with people with 15 years experience. So be yourself. Samson, we appreciate you.
Appreciate it. All right. Awesome.
We'll come back to you, buddy. So I want to get into a really important topic that I get a lot of questions about that I know you guys love talking about. It is called money. So if a job description doesn't list a salary range, that means you should not ask. Like, don't talk about money. So let's see what people say here. And I think this is like really hard stuff. Crystal, Vanessa, you guys know this. You were job seekers at one point too, and you deal with this. This is where I think students really get. They're not sure what to do. They don't want to offend. They don't know how to talk about these types of things. So what do you think? How should students approach a money conversation if they don't know how much money is out there? Crystal, you want to go first?
Vanessa, you want me to go first? Okay,
Yeah.
I can go first. I think salary negotiation and talking about salary is really important. And that's one of the things that you want to do maybe in the first screening call or the first conversation that you have. Obviously, it shouldn't be the first question, because that kind of like, as important as it is, you also want to be a little bit, you want to be respectful and you want to be firm and cordial about this. But it could be, one of your follow-up questions. If they didn't share the salary range with you up front, you can be like, what salary range do you have budgeted for this position? I think a scary question is if you don't ask that question, they're going to ask you, what are your salary expectations? And I think you need to do your research on the market, the position, the industry, the location, right? Salaries in Charlotte is different than salaries in New York. So you want to be mindful of kind of like an ideal range. The number that you are the least amount that you're willing to accept for this job, and kind of like a star number, but it shouldn't be like a crazy difference apart. It shouldn't be like 50K difference because that's quite a large range. Also be mindful of the industry. A finance role does not pay as much as a media role, regardless of entry level, years of experience, manager level role, all that stuff. And I think it's really important to have that conversation early up on the front, because you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste the company's time. You don't want to get all the way to the offer stage and be like, I actually love this job, but this money is not as much as I want.
So, Crystal, if I could ask you a direct question, then we're going to kick it to Vanessa for the fifth and final poll. Crystal, how do I ask you about a salary range? What's the specific question I should ask you without making you mad?
I think I'm an easygoing person. I don't get mad quite often, at least I hope not. But you can ask, like, what's the salary range that you have budgeted for this role? That's a fair enough question.
Great. And I think Crystal, even if she didn't, maybe it's a slip, but she's that brilliant that she made it work. When you're asking Crystal about that money, like, I don't know if you guys know this, but it's not coming out of Crystal's pocket. Like, she's not going into her bank account, or like it's buried in her bed and she's going to give it to Samson for the job. Like, it's not her money. It's the organization's money. There's a budget for a specific role, for a specific level of experience, which is why she doesn't get upset when you ask about it. Now, if you walked up on the street and asked for $50 because you want to buy a pair of shoes, she's going to be like, no, right? But it's not like that. It's
Get
not
your
her
own
money.
$50.
Exactly. So just know that, guys. That's why it's okay to talk about. She knows she has to pay you. You know you're going to get paid. Put it out there. Can you
And we
provide
want to
me
be aligned in that.
what's in the budget? Great work, Crystal. And then Vanessa, I know we talked about this, but this question came up, and I want to make sure we got to it. You can always negotiate for compensation, even if it's your first job ever.
Absolutely. Should we give people a few minutes to answer, or should we just dive right into it?
We can dive while they're answering. Looks like we're already. We got a couple no's.
Yeah.
Vanessa, did you interview with Crystal for your role?
I did not, actually.
Did you negotiate with Leah, whoever hired you?
I very much did.
We both negotiated with Leah.
Oh, she's tough negotiator.
You should always negotiate, yes. Even if it's your first job, especially if it's your first job, it's always good to negotiate. There are just a few things that you need to keep in mind as you're negotiating. One, be respectful and realistic, right? You don't want to be that person that just says, absolutely not, that's not enough money, I'm worth more than that, I need more. That's going to leave a really bad taste in the recruiter's mouth. So just make sure that you're being respectful, and you can say, actually, I had something else in mind within the range of X and Y. And you can try and push in a little bit while you're showing your ideal number or your ideal range, and also being respectful of their opinions or whatever their answer may be. Also, you need to understand that the worst that can happen is that they say no. There will not be taking the offer away just because you decided to negotiate. The worst thing that can happen is that they come back to you and say, actually, I'm so sorry, that was our final offer. And so they'll give you a few days to think about it, and you can either say yes or no. It is very unlikely that they will say, you know what, you want to negotiate, we're no longer interested in you, have a great day. And if they do that, then that's not exactly the company that you want to be at. But you should absolutely be 100% negotiating your salary, while again just being respectful.
Vanessa, how does someone ask you, is that negotiable? What's that question that our students can have to copy and paste and be ready for the next interview? How do they negotiate?
Actually, yeah. So as I've done a lot of the offers, verbal offers for the apprentices, I've gotten things just in a array of different questions. But my favorite has literally just been, is this salary negotiable? I had a different number in mind, and they would either share a range or a specific number, and that's absolutely fine. I think while you're being respectful, right, if you don't want to be as super straightforward and straight to the point, you can just say, is the salary something that can be negotiable, rather than just saying that's not enough money.
I also want to chime in and say this is why having a salary conversation before the offer stage is really important, because then companies know what numbers you're okay in. And if you feel lowballed, then, it's on the company, right? Because you already were transparent with the salary range that you were looking for. Also, sometimes at CSM, or I feel like we do a really good job with salary transparency. And if we tell you, hey, this is what the role is budgeted for, are you interested in moving forward? And you say yes, and then we get to the offer stage and you're like, actually, I want more money. Then it goes back to being respectful, because that's why we're transparent up front. It's kind of like, we don't want to waste the candidate's time. We don't want to waste our hiring team's time. So you kind of want to understand when it's okay to negotiate, when it's not okay to negotiate, and you want to balance that. But Vanessa and I are big believers in negotiation, even if it's your first job. You don't want to lowball yourself, which is why research is important and having that conversation is important. But also, it's like, you can also look at the total package, right? If it's a non-exempt role, that means you're eligible for overtime. That's time and a half over for any hours over 40 that you work in any week. Paid time off, or a later start date, or some things like that. There could be other things to negotiate other than base salary. So you can always see what's available. And again, to Vanessa's point, the worst they could do is say no.
Love it. This was amazing. I know we had some other stuff planned, Vanessa and Crystal, but we didn't get that there because you had so many juicy insights to share on everything else. So thank you so much for that. Let's give our crew a round of applause or a heart
Snaps.
or
We'll take them.
really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Vanessa did mention it. CSM has a current apprentice program. They also have a number of entry-level roles. So you guys will be receiving more information on that. CSM has offices in Indianapolis, Charlotte, New York, many other places. And obviously, if you're part of the CSM Skills Academy, you're going to learn more about the agency over those 4 weeks. So anything else that you guys would want to add related to any entry-level roles for this group?
Yeah, we just want to mention just one more time, we do have that apprentice program coming up, and I'll be sure to share all of that information with Patrick and Lana so they can forward that over to you guys. But make sure that you are applying for any positions that you find interesting, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Vanessa. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to have been here.
And now I'm going to pass it back to Lana. We're going to finish it off with some speed networking.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Thank you both so much for all your insights. All right, crew. As soon as I end the session, everyone will be pushed back into that social lounge area. Then I will start the speed networking, and then your screen will say start speed networking, and then you click into that. The industry pros and students will be paired automatically and randomly. There may be a bit more students than pros, so students, you can just wait until the next pro is available. Everybody understand? Thumbs up in the.
And if you have any issues, you find Lana at table 1. So Malik had a question.
You can also just DM me if you have any other questions, because the tables actually won't be visible. But yeah, you can just put in the chat, and then I can come find a conversation with you. But all right, let's end this and start our speed networking.